Deep in the Amazon forest lie secrets that contradict the very foundations of mainstream history. These jungle secrets are so different from what we thought we knew about the previous history of the Amazon and human civilization in South America. Researchers have made an ancient discovery that shows that long before the Incas, Maya, or Aztecs, other people lived on the continent and shaped Mesoamerican culture. Some of these mysterious peoples are believed to be living deep in the jungle to this day. When the Spanish conquistador Francisco de Orellana was one of the first Europeans to explore the Amazon region in 1542, he allegedly encountered civilizations that lived in cities and whose women were brave warriors. De Orellana therefore named the area Amazonas, after the Amazons of Greek mythology. Back in Spain, nobody believed Orella's colorful stories. The idea of large cities in the jungle was considered fantasy, and nobody wanted to believe the stories of the real Amazons. Until the present day, researchers also considered it almost impossible that previously unknown cities existed in the dense Amazon jungle. In the 1980s, archaeologists were the first to find traces of settlements on the Amazon that were older than the 16th century, and which pointed to astonishingly large structures. Modern technologies are now revealing even more of the true extent of the former settlement. In Ecuador, entire plateaus have been traced where complex systems of cities existed more than 2,000 years ago. LiDAR scans are revealing more and more houses connected by roads and surrounded by fields. LiDAR stands for Light Detection and Ranging. This radar is a further development of three-dimensional laser scanning and scans areas from the air. An intelligent computer then calculates away the vegetation, revealing hidden traces of settlements such as these. Otherwise, these areas, which are now covered in dense forest, would never have been identified as archaeological sites. It is possible that many more ancient sunken cities lie dormant in the Amazon jungle, and perhaps we will even find the legendary El Dorado thanks to the new technology. Who really lived in the Amazon? The fascinating thing is that these traces of ancient cities bear little resemblance to the cities of the Maya or Incas. Apparently, we are dealing with traces of other civilizations that may have lived here long before the Incas and Aztecs, or even before the Maya. Today, the Olmecs are generally considered to be one of the oldest Mesoamerican civilizations and the mother culture of all later South American civilizations. The Olmec Empire flourished between 1200 BC and 400 BC. The Maya emerged around 250 AD and disappeared again around 900 AD. Peoples such as the Aztecs and Incas came later. The Aztecs lived in Mexico in the 14th to 16th century AD, and the Inca Empire flourished in what is now Peru from the beginning of the 13th century until the Spanish conquest in the middle of the 16th century. The Olmec culture was demonstrably already established in South America around 3,000 years ago. In rich forests, swamps, and lagoons, the people lived from fishing and surprisingly productive agriculture. Due to the annual flooding of the rivers, fertile humus was deposited on the banks. The Olmecs probably harvested twice a year and multiplied. Villages, settlements, and small towns were connected by rivers and waterways. The Olmec Empire had four major centers: San Lorenzo, Tenochtitlan, La Venta, Cerro de las Mesas, and Tres Zapotes. However, none of these Olmec cities were built of stone, and only traces of daily life such as ceramics and everyday objects remain. The Olmecs only used stone to make the gigantic heads that were a central element of their culture and religion. Similar to the Easter Islands, this culture seems to have spared no effort in transforming the 20 to 60-ton stones into impressive faces. In addition to the heads, the Olmecs made steles and high stone altars. To get the stones for their projects, they demonstrably traveled as far as the mountains of Oaxaca and Teletico. Scientists suspect that later cults, such as those of the Maya and later the Incas and Aztecs, can be traced back to the mythology and god creations of the Olmecs. The Olmecs used a sign language which, like the Mayan script, has not yet been deciphered. We therefore only know a few details of their mythology. What is certain, however, is that the main worship was initially based on a legend that tells of the crossing of a human woman with a jaguar. This gives rise to hybrid creatures similar to werewolves, and later a rain god and other gods appeared. It is also certain that the Olmecs had a number system from 1 to 4, which were represented by dots, and higher numbers were based on a dash dot system. The Olmecs probably referred to themselves as Jaguar people. The name Olmec comes from the Aztec language and means inhabitants of Olman, or the people of the rubber country. At some point in history, the trail of the Olmecs was lost. The cities were abandoned, and why the people gave up their abundantly flourishing empire remains a mystery. What do the legends of the indigenous peoples reveal? If we take a moment to consider which peoples still live in the Amazon region today, a slightly different course of history emerges. The Olmecs were just a real ancient culture, and they have disappeared. Some indigenous tribes of the Amazon are demonstrably just as old, and they are still there today. Today, only a few peoples still live directly in the Amazon. The Amazon basin is an almost impenetrable network of rivers, lagoons, and deep jungle landscapes shared by several nations. Only in the fertile peripheral areas are there larger settlements, and the progressive destruction of the jungle is causing these agricultural zones to migrate further and further into the jungle. There, indigenous peoples such as the Yanomami are worried about their future. Genetic analyses have shown that the roots of the Yanomami go deep in the history of South America. They are one of the largest isolated indigenous groups on the continent and a people whose lives are inextricably interwoven with the forest. Their culture is a perfect reflection of the nature that surrounds them. Archaeological findings and oral traditions indicate that their ancestors inhabited this region over 15,000 years ago, and they know legends of ancient civilizations that rose and fell. The Yanomami elder tells stories of greed and the problems of no longer living in harmony with nature. What was the undoing of the Maya, Inca, and Aztecs is now being carried further into the world by the white man and his heir. Among the Yanomami, nothing happens that is not in harmony with the forest. They live in large, round communal houses, gather in their village square, consult together, and always involve the spirits of the forest. They know that they can only take as much as they need for their daily lives. Otherwise, the balance is upset and the spirit world takes its revenge. In ceremonies, the Yanomami honor Mother Earth, the elements, and animal spirits. The Yanomami are far removed from the idolatry and building mania practiced by other cultures. For them, the forest is a sacred source of food, medicine, and an integral part of their spiritual world. The Kayapo, whose history and culture are just as rich and diverse as the ecosystem that surrounds them, live in a very similar way. The Kayapo are known for their remarkable ability to protect their environment while preserving their traditional way of life. They are said to have received this knowledge from the animal spirits of the jungle. We civilized people often think such stories are nonsense, and yet these people manage to magically extract their livelihood from the jungle and live in harmony. The Kayapo also live less centrally, but in widely scattered communities connected by rivers. Their form of agroforestry and agriculture has attracted the interest of international conservation organizations and given the people a voice. They cultivate a rich variety of food in the forest without destroying it. The Kayapo also know legends of people who suddenly disappeared or were lured into an ambush by the spirits. The Kayapo call this mirages, and they keep their people clean of them. The shamans of the people are certain that the success and happiness of a tribe depends on which mystical beings they get involved with, and you can imagine that we Westerners don't come off particularly well in the eyes of the Kayapo. Madness through gold and false gods? The life of the simple yet happy people in the Amazon region shows some serious differences to the lost cultures. The cities and cultures discovered by the LiDAR scans did not live with the jungle. They apparently cleared it, built square houses, and enclosed land for agriculture. These are signs of early civilizing cultures as we know them. Kayapo and Yanomami were able to survive for thousands of years, but the inhabitants of these cities, the Olmecs, Maya, Incas, and Aztecs, largely disappeared at some point. Among the Olmecs, the beginning of idol worship is striking. The delusion of representing gods through large monuments probably also ruined the inhabitants of Easter Island. Could false gods also have brought down the Olmecs? Possibly. Primitive peoples would probably not go to such lengths. For both Amazonian tribes we have presented, true religion lies in simplicity and cooperation with good spirits and gods. The Maya invested a lot of energy in the construction of stone structures and at some point fell prey to a strange belief in gods that demanded increasingly bloody and brutal sacrifices. Eventually, subsequent peoples such as the Incas and the Aztecs themselves became victims of the Europeans' greed for gold. In their search for values, they penetrated deep into the jungle and also encountered the simple tribes there, but they were largely uninteresting because they had no gold. But some of them knew the legend of El Dorado, the Golden City. Somewhere in the jungle there was said to be a city of pure gold that had remained undiscovered to this day. The conquistadors almost went mad in search of the gold, and many lost their lives in a greedy quest in an environment that they were unable to cope with. Today, experts argue whether El Dorado really exists or whether some indigenous people may have allowed themselves to be cleverly deceived. They lured the Spaniards onto a trail, which they doggedly followed, possibly to protect the simple people who lived in the region. There is actually a legend of a Golden Man, or the ritual act in which the ruler of the Maisuca, an indigenous people in Colombia, covered his body with gold dust and threw precious objects into a sacred lake as an offering. Over time, the story could have changed into that of El Dorado and an entire Golden Empire. Of course, even in modern times, adventurers and explorers have searched for traces of El Dorado. So far, the city has not been located, but the new LiDAR scans may prove a surprise here too. The Lanos de Moos, also known as the Mojos Plains or Moxos, is a region in the Bolivian Amazon that was home to a large and complex urban settlement around 600 years ago. This settlement was built by the Mojos culture, which was known for its advanced irrigation and agricultural practices. The Mojos culture flourished in the region from about 400 AD to 1400 AD, and their urban center covered an area of about 40 square kilometers. The settlement was made up of a series of interconnected canals, raised fields, and mounds, and it was estimated that it was the home to a population of between 10,000 and 50,000 people. However, around 600 years ago, the Mojos culture abandoned the settlement, and it is still not entirely clear why. Some theories suggest that climate change may have played a role, as the region experienced a period of drought around that time. Others suggest that political instability or warfare may have led to the decline of the culture. Today, the Lanos de Moos is a sparsely populated and largely underdeveloped region, though there are efforts underway to preserve and study the ancient ruins of the Mojos culture. The largest evidence so far of the sophisticated cultures that coexisted in what was long considered to be unadulterated wilderness has been revealed by archaeologists' discovery of the remnants of a massive network of villages buried beneath the vegetation of the Bolivian Amazon. The Lanos de Moos region, a tropical grassland in the Amazonian basin, is home to a system of monumental centers, cities, and villages that covers hundreds, if not thousands, of square kilometers. Archaeologists first discovered mysterious mounds in the area more than a century ago. Over 1,700 square miles of the Lanos de Moos area had previously been covered by hands-on archaeological work, as well as other remote sensing strategies that had uncovered hundreds of remote sites, including year-round Casabri settlements where people hunted, fished, and farmed staple crops like maize. Moreover, 600 miles of causeways and canals had been located. Yet attempts to connect the dots and determine whether or how they were related to one another were hampered by the practical difficulties of mapping them in a remote tropical jungle. Since then, archaeologists have discovered proof of the Casarabi culture, which flourished in the region between AD 500 and 1400, a huge urban ecosystem that featured interconnecting campsites, villages, towns, and monumental centers lived in the Amazon rainforest more than 600 years ago. An ancient kingdom of citadels and gold is hidden deep in the Amazon jungle, is the fable that lured armies of explorers and adventurers to their deaths. Over the years, others who believed they would discover a lost civilization to rival the Aztecs and Incas followed the Spanish conquistadors into the rainforest in search of riches. El Dorado and the City of Z were two names given to it by its travelers. Nevertheless, the forest ate them up, and when nothing was discovered, the rest of the world dismissed it as a fable. The Amazon was too hostile for significant human settlements, according to experts of the 20th century. But now it has been established that the tragic dreamers were correct. There was a vast civilization. In what what is now Bolivia, members of the Casar culture created an urban system that included straight, elevated causeways running over several kilometers, water channels, and reservoirs. In the Amazon or anywhere else in South America, such low-density urban expansion from the pre-Columbian periods were previously unheard of. To provide a bird's-eye picture of what was the Casar culture center of Bolivia between 500 and 1400 CE, the team carried out airborne LiDAR mapping of 6 distinct locations, ranging in size from 4 square miles to 32 square miles. Hundreds of thousands of infrared beams are fired down from an airplane each second by a LiDAR system, and each beam that hits an object on the Earth's surface bounces back with an indication of distance. This generates a massive amount of data points, which can be incorporated into computer software to make high-resolution photos that allow researchers to digitally clear the Amazon. The maps expose the Earth's surface and its archaeological features by scraping away forests. In this case, the images clearly showed 26 unique sites, including 11 that were previously unknown. There were 2 significant cities, Landvar and Cotoca, among the 26 sites. Although their existence was long known, the new maps revealed their extensive extent and intricate archaeology, 1.2 and 0.5 square miles respectively. Each big city is encircled by a series of rampart and moat defense circles. The locations are home to large earthen platform constructions, conical pyramids over 70 feet tall, and artificial terraces. Also, all of these magnificent civic and ceremonial structures face north-northwest, which archaeologists believe represents a cosmological worldview seen at other prehistoric sites in the Amazon. 2 centers, each anchored by a vast network of regional communities connected by numerous causeways, were visible in the overhead picture after the trees had been cut down. These tunnels extend for several kilometers and radiate out from the centers like spokes on a wheel. They link modest, close-to-the-center suburban villages to farther-flung, even smaller places that may have served as temporary campsites. Similar to this, canals extend out from the major settlements and connect to rivers and Laguna San Jose, which is thought to have supplied Cotoca with water. More than 200 enormous geometric earthworks carved in the upper Amazon basin close to Brazil's border with Bolivia have been discovered by new satellite photography and flyovers. The network of avenues, ditches, and enclosures, which spans 155 miles, was constructed long before Christopher Columbus first set foot in the New World. It is made up of circles, squares, and other geometric shapes. Some go back as far as 200 AD, while others date to 1283. There may be another 2,000 structures, remnants of long-gone civilizations, hidden beneath the jungle canopy, according to scientists who have surveyed the earthworks. According to the journal Antiquity, the constructions reflect a sophisticated pre-Columbian monument building community, many of which have been uncovered by the clearing of forests for agriculture. A system of ditches that were 36 feet, almost 11 meters broad by several feet deep, with banks that were up to 3 feet high, was used to build the structures. Low mounds holding stone tools, charcoal, and ceramics surrounded several of them. It is estimated that they were utilized as defenses, houses, and places of worship, and that they could have supported 60,000 people, which is more than many medieval European cities could support. Theories that the mounds had astronomical significance arose from the fact that many of them were symmetrical and tilted toward the north. The similarity of the earthworks in floodplains and uplands, which suggested they were all constructed by the same culture, startled researchers the most. According to their cosmology, they essentially reshaped the terrain, which is mind-blowing, says Chris Fisher, a Mesoamerican expert at Colorado State University. The main issue is that mud bricks were used to build this structure. The Maya structures have survived because they were built of limestone, whereas they were not as durable, even if at the time they were as stunning as anything found in the Maya region. Going further, there have been several discoveries of lost cities in the Amazon region by scientists in recent years. One of the most notable discoveries was made in 2018, when researchers from the University of Exeter in the UK used satellite imagery to identify evidence of a network of fortified villages in the upper Tapajos basin of Brazil. The villages were thought to have been built by a civilization known as the Tapajonic culture, which thrived in the region between 1250 and 1500 CE. The discovery of the villages challenged the long-held view that the Amazon was a pristine wilderness before the arrival of Europeans. The upper Tapajos basin of Brazil is an area that has been of interest to archaeologists for many years, as it is thought to have been inhabited by various indigenous groups for thousands of years. The discovery of a network of fortified villages in this region is therefore significant, as it suggests that the indigenous people who lived here had a complex social organization organization and may have been involved in conflict with neighboring groups. Compared to the Maya, the Casarbi is perhaps less well known. Who were they then? Their civilization was unique, and the area they lived in was probably a savanna that was sometimes inundated with riverfront forests rather than the enormous, uninterrupted stands of trees that can be found there now. Geographically speaking, Andean cultures, who are known for their massive platforms, mounds, and temples, are nearby. However, according to Heiko Prumers, co-author of the German Archaeological Institute, there was no Andean immigration or influence that led to the development of these urban areas. The Andes are very well studied, and you won't find any site of this type in the Andes, so we can say it's not something that came from the Andes. He says, it is exclusively Amazonian. The fate of the Casari and their town is unknown, although dating at the sites indicates that they were occupied until around 1400 CE, which was before the arrival of the Europeans in the Amazon. Prumers speculates that the cause may have been a widespread drought. His team has discovered significant water storage reservoirs at several locations, which defies logic given that the Amazon region is famed for its abundant rainfall. In 2021, another team of researchers from the UK and Brazil discovered evidence of a vast network of causeways, ditches, and mounds in the southern Amazon rainforest. The structures, which they thought to have been built by the civilization known as the Geoglyph builders, date back to 1250 and 1500 CE. The Geoglyph builders are believed to have created these structures for religious or ceremonial purposes, and they are thought to have been part of a larger cultural network that extended across the Amazon region. The discovery of these structures provides further evidence of the complex and sophisticated civilizations that once existed in the Amazon rainforest. Geoglyph builders were ancient people who created large-scale designs on the ground, often using rocks, stones, or other materials known as geoglyphs. Geoglyphs are large drawings or formations that are created by removing, rearranging, or piling up natural materials on the ground to create an image that can only be seen from above. The most famous geoglyph builders are the Nazca people, who lived in what is now southern Peru between 1250 and 1500 CE. The Nazca people created some of the most impressive geoglyphs in the world, including figures of animals, plants, and geometric shapes. These geoglyphs are so large that they can only be fully appreciated from the air. The Nazca people created their geoglyphs by removing the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles that cover the surface of the Nazca Desert, exposing the lighter-colored earth underneath. The designs range in size from just a few meters across to several hundred meters, and many of them are still visible today, almost 1,000 years after they were created. The purpose of these geoglyphs is still a mystery, but many researchers believe that they may have been ceremonial or religious significance, or perhaps even astronomical purposes. Some theories suggest that they may have been used as part of a water cult, with the designs representing water sources or the paths of underground rivers. Other cultures in the region, such as the Paracas and the Tiwanaku, also created geoglyphs, but the Nazca people are the most well-known geoglyph builders in South America. Their designs continue to fascinate researchers and visitors alike, and the Nazca lines have been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The civilization that flourished here, though it had an unknown end, adds to the mounting evidence that the Amazon isn't one of the world's great unexplored wilderness areas and did not exist as an unbroken forest until very modern times. Paleoclimate research suggests that a substantial portion of the Amazon forest is considerably younger than previously thought, and that before Europeans arrived in the Americas, large portions of the Amazon, perhaps a fifth, were essentially open savanna ecosystems. An environment like this would have made it easier for Amazonians, many of whom probably resided in urban or suburban towns with high levels of socio-political organization, to undertake the kind of landscape engineering that is becoming more and more obvious was done by them. The pattern clearly showed two very large towns, buried within a settlement system, with a degree of social intricacy that hasn't been proven very effective in the Amazon, according to the researcher who was able to observe patterns that it is just not visible from the ground. It's quite great, I tell you. Although it indicates that there was once a flurry of human activity in the Amazon, many ancient sites have stayed virtually unaltered for about 500 years, which is a major advantage. The area has a very low population density, which implies that the remnants of pre-Spanish cultures remain virtually unaltered. Hidden islands. Ecologists discovered more than 3,500 islands that formed recently in the Amazon. These islands have become a threat to various species living on them because the spaces they provide are too small for the species to thrive. The species can't cross the water to other parts of the forest, so they are stuck there. forever. The islands also offer limited resources, so species trapped there could vanish at an alarming rate. Species trapped in the islands include mammals of all sizes, lizards, frogs, and trees. But what created these islands? In recent times, dozens of dams have been built across rivers of the Amazon basin. One such dam is the Balbina Dam, built in the 1980s. As these dams took in water, they left forest patches in hilly parts of the Amazon basin. 95% of the islands are less than 1 square kilometer in size. These islands were able to maintain only modest amounts of biodiversity, which has important consequences for how well ecosystems work. A boiling river. This river is a tributary to the Amazon River. Its water can reach high temperatures of 45 degrees Celsius or 113 degrees Fahrenheit. It is called Shane Tempishka or Lamboba. Its name means boiled by the heat of the sun, but local shamans in the area believe that its heat is because of a giant serpent spirit known as Yakumama, or the Mother of the Waters. However, scientists discovered that the source of its heat is geothermal. Geothermal scientist Andre Russo investigated the source of the heat. The river is not close to any volcanoes or geothermal vents, so how does it maintain such high temperatures? Scientists believe that it is because of the geothermal gradients in the Earth. The water gets heated in the Earth's crust and then fed back to the surface through fault-fed hot springs. Prehistoric. Scientists believe that the Amazon is largely unexplored by man, but there is new evidence to change their minds. Let's look at prehistoric pieces of evidence hidden in the Amazon rainforest. Titanboa. Titanboa is an extinct snake species known for its size. It lived in a part of Colombia now known as La Guaira. It could grow up to 47 feet long and weigh up to 2,500 pounds. Scientists thought that this behemoth was an apex predator, but after its skull was discovered, they realized that it probably preyed on fish. A team of scientists led by University of Florida paleontologist Jonathan Block discovered fossils of up to 30 Titanboas in 2009 in La Guaira. It is the largest snake on the paleontological record. What's scarier? Some locals believe that the snake isn't extinct but hides beneath the deep waters of the Amazon. So, if you're planning to take a swim, please beware. Underwater etchings. The rainforest is home to more than 30 million people, but a recent occurrence left tens of thousands of them stranded. This is because the Amazon River fell to its lowest level in more than 100 years. As the water level fell, it left dried sandbanks, but a fisherman found something engraved in the rock that could have been made 7,000 years ago. This was in the Rio Negro tributary of the Amazon River. Researchers were able to take photographs of these etchings before the water level rose again. The etchings showed images of faces and snakes. Archaeologists believe that the etchings are proof that civilizations lived in the Amazon thousands of years ago. The president of the Brazilian Society of Archaeology, Eduardo Neves, spoke about the importance of the discovery. He said, "There has always been this idea that the Amazon was empty. The truth is, this hypothesis is not correct. In many parts of the Amazon, we now have proof of settlements." Neves also revealed his hope that the discovery would help their efforts to preserve the rainforest and the ancient secrets which are hidden within. Ancient civilizations. Hundreds of years ago, Spanish explorers were excited to find El Dorado, a city of gold. Many explorers made their way to South America, particularly rainforests like the Amazon, in search of the city of wealth. Many of them never returned home, but the mythical city was never found. But were the civilizations thriving in the vast rainforest? Scientists used light-based remote sensing technology, LiDAR, to scan parts of the forest and reveal what is hidden beneath the trees. They found the ancient remnants of a huge urban community that was abandoned some 600 years ago at Lanos de Moos in the Bolivian Amazon. It revealed details of the socially complex Casar culture, 500 to 1400 CE. With urban centers displaying grand platforms and pyramid structures. This led scientists to believe that the area wasn't just populated, it enjoyed a level of urbanization. Geoglyphs. Deforestation is a major concern in the Amazon region of Brazil, but it led to the discovery of more than 4,500 ditches shaped geometrically. These ditches are known as geoglyphs that cover an area of 13,000 square kilometers or 5,000 square miles in the Brazilian state of Acre. Researchers aren't sure what the geoglyphs were made for. They couldn't determine if they were villages because not enough artifacts were found. They also doubt that they were designed for military purposes. A theory is that they were made for ritual purposes. The researchers found out that the bamboo woods had been altered by people to make short-term clearing for the geoglyphs. It means that they didn't resort to deforestation to build these structures for themselves. Hidden symbols. Scientists found a 2,000-year-old monolith in the Amazon area in northern Peru. Carvings on the ancient stone showed symbols like spirals, circles, and feline fangs. The 3D scan performed on the monolith was done by Jason Kleinhans, an application engineer at Exact Meteorology. He stated that the patterns are abstract and ornate and hard to define in words. However, he also discovered 2 teeth from a feathered feline god and a circle with a hole in the center and some straight lines emanating from it. The carvings on the rock date between 200 BC and 200 AD. At that time, there were no writing systems in Peru. Kleinhans' team also noted that the rock wasn't sourced locally, so the ancient people probably transported it through the jungle with ropes. Animals. Up to 4,000 animal species call the Amazon home. Here's a couple of them you've probably never heard of. Glass frogs. These frogs are usually lime green in color, but the abdominal skin of some of the frogs is transparent and translucent. This makes organs like their heart, liver, and gastrointestinal tract visible through their skin when the frogs are active. The frogs live in trees but come out to mate during the mating season. Their transparency serves as a form of defense. It is especially effective when they sleep on green leaves. Purring monkey. Babies of this species are known to make purring noises like cats to express contentment. These are the Kakata titi monkey, also known as the red-bearded titi or the bushy-beard titi. They are found in the Columbia region of the rainforest. The species were first described by biologists Thomas Deffler, Marta Bueno, and Avia Garcia in 2010. These monkeys have brown fur, but their tails are lighter. Their necks and cheeks are chestnut red, and they have red beards. Their diets consist of fruits and leaves. Sadly, habitat fragmentation and a small population have made the purring monkey endangered. People and tribes. The Amazon forest is an ancestral home of over 1 million Indians. Indigenous tribes within the forest number up to 400. These tribes have their unique languages, cultures, and territories, but not all of them contact the outside world. This section explores some of these tribes and their people. Man of the Hole. There were several clashes between illegal miners and settlers and indigenous tribes in the Brazilian Amazon. These clashes often ended in genocide, with tribes like the Kano and Akusnu being massacred. The Man of the Hole was the sole survivor of his tribe. Members of his tribe were killed in the 1970s, with survivors of the tribe killed off in 1995. After their death, he maintained a reclusive lifestyle, rejecting anyone that tried to come close. No one knew his real name or the language he spoke. He moved frequently, but dug deep holes in all his homes, which was why he was referred to as the Man of the Hole. The Brazilian Constitution has laws that give the indigenous people rights to the lands they occupy. The Fundação Nacional de Índio, or FUNAI, is Brazil's government agency for indigenous interests. FUNAI agents kept tabs on him. He was aware of this, but avoided direct contact. They left gifts of tools and seeds for him, and he would signal them whenever they strayed too close to his traps. The Man of the Hole was found dead in his last home on the 24th of August, 2022. He was found by FUNAI agent Altair Jose Alagar. He was estimated to be 60 years at the time of his death. Wapi Tribe. Members of the Wapi Tribe contacted the outside world in 1973, but they decided to demarcate their land. They were given 1.5 million acres of protected land in 1996 for their personal use and governance. But there is a problem. During his tenure, former Brazilian President Bolsonaro wanted to move the Wapi from their land and integrate them into society. Part of the Wapi land is rich in gold and silver, which the government wished to mine, but the Wapi refused this offer. A tribe member, Tapayana Wapaya, stated, "If the Brazilian government sends soldiers to kill people, we'll keep resisting until the last of us is dead." AWA Tribe. The AWA Tribe has approximately 350 members, but 100 of them have refused contact with the outside world. They speak Guhara, a Tupi-Guarani language. The AWA people previously lived in settlements, but they chose their current nomadic lifestyle around 1800, when European assaults were common. Some AWA migrated to townships created by the government starting in the middle of the 1980s. They were able to keep their traditional way of life for the most part. They live in nomadic bands of a few hundred individuals. They are completely reliant on their forests and have little to no interaction with the outside world. In 1982, the World Bank and the European Union gave Brazil a loan of $900 million. This money was to be used to protect some indigenous tribes like the AWA. However, the tribe still suffers attack from illegal loggers. Survival International began a global campaign to defend the AWA people in April 2012. The campaign was backed by actor Colin Firth. Paranormal. With the presence of ancient relics and invisible animals, it won't be strange that the paranormal has also pitched its tent in the world's largest forest. This section seems like it has been pulled out of nightmares. Witches. What better way to launch this section than witches? This event happened in the indigenous community of Jaragamazu Alto, Peru's part of the Amazon. Locals burned an old woman alive. The 73-year-old Rosa Villar Jaronica was accused of being a witch who made people fall sick. A witness shot a video of the execution. Villar's hands were bound. In the video, she was placed among a pile of branches and dry logs. A man poured gasoline on her and set her on fire. Villar can be heard shouting in the video. The fire was left burning for 3 days, so no traces of her body could be found. It took a while for the police to hear about the execution, but when they searched the crime scene, they found some bones. Such events are quite common in the area. This is mostly because the indigenous communities lack a strong government presence. El Mayantu. The different cultures of the Amazon have various scary legends, but El Mayantu legend speaks of a rather friendly creature. El Mayantu lurks somewhere in the Peruvian part of the Amazon. This reptilian creature looks like a goblin with the face of a toad and scaly skin. Mayantu roams between 2 dimensions and is a master of camouflage. It can imitate the bark of a tree or take the shape of an animal. Some locals claim to have sighted this creature, mostly in the wetlands. The Mayantu is rather friendly towards humans and would come to their aid if the human finds himself in trouble. It also knows plants that can cure human illnesses. However, if the person seeks to harm the forest, the Mayantu can prove to be quite mischievous. El Mayantu is worshipped by native Yugawa Indians. They refer to him as the god of good, or curandero, which means the one who cares. Alien in the trees. Paranormal writer Michael Cohen received a video that proves the existence of extraterrestrials in the Amazon. The video was made in the Manaus region of the Amazon by 2 British tourists. The tourists were capturing children who posed for them, but standing in the trees behind them was an alien creature. Behind the creature was a bright light. The tourists didn't realize this until well after their shoot. With the vastness of the Amazon and its biodiversity, what better place is there for aliens to pitch their tent on Earth? Putu, a master of camouflage. Let's dive into the first picture in the Explorer's album. It shows a bird sitting motionless on a branch, its feathers blending perfectly with the bark of the tree. The Explorer's handwritten note tells us, "The Putu is a spirit of the jungle, as really seen as the whisper of the wind. Its eyes are as bright as glowing coals, and they pierce the darkness of the night." The story of the Putu bird unfolds before our eyes. In his album, the adventurer goes on to describe how this bird, which is native to South and Central America, catches its prey. The Putu simply grabs its prey, such as moths, termites, and grasshoppers, in flight. What a feat! In the explorer's notes, we learn that the Putu is a faithful bird that lives monogamously and chooses a partner for life. In the darkness of the jungle, these birds lead a lonely but fulfilling life. The description of the Putu bird, how it disguises itself as a broken branch during the day and breaks the silence of the jungle at night with its glowing eyes and eerie call, transports us directly to the Amazon jungle. It is as if we were there ourselves and could see the bird opening its beak and emitting an eerie cry to scare off intruders. We also learn about the threats facing the Putu, with the ongoing deforestation in the forests of South and Central America causing problems for the species. With every word we read, we realize the importance of protecting this unique species and its habitat. Kuru, before we turn the pages of the album, we pause for a moment. It's almost as if the Putu call can be heard in the distance. Running palms? We turn the next page and our eyes immediately fall on another fascinating photo. The walking palms, known as Socratia exoriza, is written underneath. The picture shows a majestic palm whose roots crawl like tentacles across the forest floor. The carefully written notes of the discoverer tell of a phenomenon that seems almost too miraculous to be true. The wandering palms are the nomads of the rainforest. Their roots rise above the ground as if they are looking for the best way through the dense undergrowth. and as if they are wandering, slowly but inexorably, in search of the sunlight. Intrigued by the idea that these palms could actually move, we read further how these palms extend new roots towards better light conditions while the old roots die off, giving the impression that the palm is wandering through the jungle. The unique adaptability allows the palm to survive in an ever-changing ecosystem. The story continues with a description of the habitat of these palms in the rainforests of Central and South America. The explorer talks about his observations of how the palms use their environment to assert themselves against competitors for light and nutrients. He describes the fascination of local rainforest guides and scientists who still disagree about the true nature of this movement. We eagerly turn the page again. Bathing is deadly here. The next picture is shocking. A steaming, bubbling waterway winding its way through the dense jungle. The caption reads, "The Boiling River." The words of the foreign explorer take us once again into a world that seems surreal. In the heart of the Peruvian Amazon hides a natural phenomenon of inexplicable power, a river that boils. Its waters reach temperatures so high that they can destroy all life in it. This geothermal wonder takes our breath away. The explorer recounts his journey to this river, the heat that rises from its waters, and the vapors that transform the jungle into a misty, surreal place. He describes how the river has a sacred meaning for the indigenous communities and who see it as a place of healing and spiritual power. We close the album for a moment and let our thoughts drift to this mysterious, boiling river hidden deep in the jungle. Can you feel the hot water in the air, the steam, and can you smell the strange odors? We linger for a few moments in this mystical place, and then we continue on our jungle tour. The Real Tarzan. When we read the next line, "The Legend of the Real Tarzan," our eyes go wide. Tarzan. Who hasn't wished to live like the man who was raised by wild animals? However, the photo of the real Tarzan does not show a dashing giant or a cheerful young man talking to apes. The photo shows a bearded man sitting in homemade clothes in a primitive shelter in the jungle. Ho Van Lang lived alone in the jungle for 41 years, cut off from the outside world. After losing his family in the Vietnam War, he fled to the jungle with his father, where they lived a life far from civilization. The explorer goes on to describe the incredible survival skills Ho Van Lang was able to develop. He learns how Ho and his father obtained food and building materials from the jungle, how they set traps, and how they protected themselves from the dangers of the jungle. Ho Van Lang has spent most of his life without contact with other people or the modern world. When Ho was found by outsiders and taken to the city, he had great difficulty understanding the modern world. The world outside the jungle was completely alien to him. A zombie mushroom. Still impressed by the story of the real Tarzan? We turn the page and for a moment we are struck with disgust. The picture shows an ant with a bizarre mushroom-like growth protruding from its head. The title of the chapter is The Mystery of the Zombie Mushroom. The explanation takes us to the world of the Cordyceps fungus, a parasite that perfectly manipulates the behavior of its insect hosts. This fungus is a master of control. It infects ants and other insects and then takes over their motor functions, turning them into zombies. The fungus drops its spores onto insects, which are then infected. Over time, the fungus grows inside the host until it affects the brain and causes the insect to position itself in a location favorable to the fungus. Eventually, the fungus breaks out of the host's body to spread its spores and continue the cycle. The discoverer describes how he watched this process with a mixture of fascination and horror, and we can feel our throats tighten. Hopefully there is no fungus that has the idea of doing the same to humans. Shocked, we put the album aside for a moment and think about what we have just read. The jungle is a fascinating world, but also full of dangers and oddities. The ugliest turtle in the world. The outlandish discoveries continue, and the explorer's album next reveals a picture of the Mata tortoise with its bizarre, gnarled appearance, almost looks like a piece of the jungle itself. The chapter takes us deep into the mysterious world of this unusual creature, which, like the Putu, lives in the jungle as a masterpiece of camouflage. With its rough, uneven shell and a head that looks like a piece of rotting wood, It is perfectly adapted to life in the murky waters of the Amazon. These turtles barely move so as to not attract attention. Their bizarre features, including their long tubular snouts, are perfect for going unnoticed in murky waters and breathing without giving up their camouflage. Motionless, the Mata waits patiently for its prey, fish, which it catches with a sudden snap of its wide mouth. We also learn that despite its fearsome appearance, the Mata is completely harmless to humans. The monkey god lives. Next, we are presented with the remains of an ancient, overgrown city hidden deep in the jungle. The title of the chapter reveals where we are now arrived on our jungle expedition. The lost city of the monkey god takes us to a city shrouded in legend. For a long time, researchers thought it was a mere legend until a team of archaeologists and explorers finally discovered evidence of its true existence. Using modern technology such as LiDAR, we are able to make out the outline of a city beneath the dense vegetation. The album describes how the lone explorer undertook a journey to this city, which had been hidden under dense jungle for centuries. He discovered a place full of myths and legends. The monkey god was worshipped by the Mesoamerican culture. Remains of plazas, mounds, and even a pyramid were found in his city, which was probably built between 1000 and 1400 AD. A boathouse in the jungle? Now it gets strange again. An abandoned boathouse, half surrounded by lush greenery, hidden deep in the jungle? The chapter is called The Abandoned Boathouse, and it reveals the story of a mysterious place. In the shadows of the jungle, hidden from the eyes of the world, lies an abandoned boathouse that is more than just a ruin. It is a portal to a forgotten time, a witness to days gone by. It lies on a quiet, remote river surrounded by dense jungle. The explorer describes how he carefully explored the boathouse, fascinated by the silence and the atmosphere of abandonment. He talks about the objects he finds inside, rusted tools, a broken oar, and old faded photos that tell stories of a time when the boathouse was still a living part of the jungle. The explorer speculates about the people who once lived and worked here, and the lives they may have led. The idea of living in such a lonely place fascinates us. For a few moments, we reflect on transience and how places and memories fade over time, only to reappear in the silence of nature. The image of the abandoned boathouse sticks in our minds, and we dreamily go into the jungle ourselves, full of curiosity as to what adventures await us there. 32.8-foot Anaconda. They are legend, feared and admired at the same time. Monsters that devour whole cows or people, skin and hair in one fell swoop. It is estimated that thousands of anacondas live in the endless jungle areas of the Amazon. People rarely see these animals, as most of these giant snakes hide deep in the forest out of fear of human retaliation. Occasionally, however, humans and anacondas do encounter each other, and it really ends well. Whole humans disappear inside the bodies of these constrictor snakes. An anaconda grabs its prey as if from nowhere, puts it in a stranglehold for which it cannot escape, and then simply swallows the prey. Everything is digested: skin, hair, horns, scales, or even clothes. The largest anaconda ever discovered was spotted on a construction site in the rainforest in Brazil. According to eyewitness reports, the creature measured an incredible 32.8 feet. Whether the snake was already injured or even dead when the excavator pulled the animal out of the mud is not known to us. This documentation of the monster has often been presented as a forgery, but we have enough evidence to suggest that these images could also be genuine. In Brazil, it's no secret that anacondas typically grow up to 19.7 feet long. A 32.8-foot monster would be an exception, but certainly not impossible. Anacondas prefer to hunt other animals where they feel safe. Humans mercilessly hunt the giant snakes as soon as they are sighted near settlements or cities. The snakes are unpredictable, and protecting oneself from them is hardly possible. Although these monsters are gigantic, they approach silently. You could be standing under a tree, pause and hear or see nothing, and still feel from one moment to the next how a muscular tube winds around your body and tightens even more. There is no escape then. The Bone Crusher. We continue our jungle adventure and introduce you to an animal that once terrorized the rainforests of Brazil. As a modern rainforest adventurer, you will be safe from the Brazilian bone crusher, as this monster lived about 230 million years ago. Researchers found a skeleton in the Brazilian rainforest, and it showed the reptilian-like creature feasting on a dinosaur carcass. The terrifying predator was killed while eating, for reasons still unexplained, and thus preserved for posterity. It is believed that the creature named Dinomosuchus is related to modern crocodiles. The fossils were discovered in a so-called dinosaur graveyard at the foot of a hill in the picturesque Brazilian town of Agudo. The prehistoric beast was only 8.2 feet long, but the animal's teeth were enormous. Based on the location of the find, researchers suspect that the animal primarily fed on carrion. To be able to consume the dinosaurs, it had a jaw with strong teeth that broke bones like matchsticks. However, it is also not ruled out that the Dinomosuchus colicensis actively hunted when the opportunity presented itself. Killing living dinosaurs would have been one thing, but grabbing an unsuspecting hobby adventurer wandering through the jungle from behind would have been easy for the bone crusher. Oh, how nice it is to live in the 21st century, to have a cozy sofa, a few chips, and the good feeling of being really safe. Evil chocolate frog. Researchers are constantly discovering new fascinating species in the Amazon rainforest. This is particularly interesting because the rest of the world is affected by a dramatic species extinction. Just recently, a young biologist posted a picture of a strangely looking amphibian on Twitter. Quickly, the cute little frog had a large viral fan base, and people around the world wanted to know more about the frog that somehow looked like Harry Potter's magic chocolate frogs. But then came the sobering realization. Because the researchers who had tracked down this little creature in the Peruvian Amazon region made horrifying observations. The frog, less than 0.4 inches in size, turned out to be real macho. Especially the males are noticeably aggressive. They hide in herds in the mud and are ready to fight all day. They secure their territory through peculiar calls, and if another frog or another intruder approaches, they attack immediately. In between, the mini frogs burrow into the mud and lie in wait there. Occasionally a call sounds, then silence again. David Sanchez from the Amazon Institute for Scientific Research in Colombia followed the trail of the frogs based solely on their shrill calls. DNA analysis confirmed that the frog is a completely new species and cannot be compared to any other frog in the world. The peculiar long form and the appearance similar to a tapir earned the amphibian the nickname tapir frog. The scientific name is Cyniopistanta danta. The habitat of the tapir frog lies in the peat bogs of an area intended to be a protected zone. Perhaps the little frog will be responsible for the area becoming a national park in the near future, as rare species like this one are protected and promoted by the government. Manaconda. Bet you've never seen an animal like this before. Of course, you're not the only one. The researchers felt the same way when they first discovered a Manaconda. This peculiar creature is officially called Aretiacona isaleti, and, contrary to what nickname Manaconda suggests, it is not dangerous. Manacondas were first described in 1968, but then the discovery was forgotten. It wasn't until 2012 that there were many more sightings in the Amazon waters, and researchers were finally able to capture and describe the first specimens. Among the population, the slippery and eyeless creatures are aptly called penis snakes, because there is indeed a certain resemblance to the male member that cannot be denied. Although these amphibious creatures are blind, they are incredibly quick in the fast-flowing Amazon waters. It is also speculated that they do not have lungs and breathe exclusively through their skin. There have been no investigations in this direction yet, as the rare Manacondas are strictly protected and therefore cannot be removed from their habitat or even cut open for study purposes. In contrast to Brazil's many poisonous or deadly snake species, this creature is completely harmless, but it would probably give you a scare as an inexperienced Amazon explorer. Mapandari. If penis snakes and aggressive mini frogs haven't thrown you off your game yet, this guy certainly would. The Mapandari is one of the strangest creatures ever sighted in Brazil. Allegedly, people have also encountered this creature in Paraguay and Venezuela. In Brazilian folklore, this huge, hairy thing is also called the huma. The truly bizarre part of this creature is the mouth with sharp teeth, which is said to be located directly on the belly. Its name roughly translates to the screaming monster, the stinky one, or the crooked beast. Indigenous residents of the region claim that this creature really exists and one can hear the terrifying screams of the beast at night. Aside from its belly mouth, the Mapandari sometimes resembles Bigfoot or the snowman Yeti. The appearance of the Mapandari varies by region, the most unnerving of the stories that tell of the creature being a cyclops with only one eye. Others report that the Mapandari first appears to be a bear, but when it stands on its hind legs, the gaping jaw on its belly becomes visible. The size of the monster is almost uniformly described as about 8.2 feet. Scientists who went in search of the creature concluded that it most likely is mistaken for the giant sloth, as they did not find a real Mapandari. Relics of cannibalism. The Brazilian rainforest is teeming not only with terrifying animals, but people have also left traces here that send chills down one's spine. Deep in the jungle, researchers came across the relics of a people who lived there more than 10,000 years ago and practiced a bizarre burial cult. Many of the found bones showed signs of mutilation and other cruel deeds. People brutally shattered the jaws of their own dead, removing the teeth and separating the muscle flesh from the body. These traces of early cannibalism were found in the Lapidao Santo cave in Lago Santa. Severed skulls and jaws were stored in the depression near the surface of the cave and covered with a limestone slab. The heads were always severed along with the first 6 cervical vertebrae. These people also removed the hands from the dead bodies and carefully placed them next to the heads. Burial ceremonies associated with cannibalism are more common in the area. Dr. Domingo Carlos Salazar, a researcher at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology, confirmed that certain tribes in Brazil commemorated their deceased by eating them. This practice, known as endocannibalism, was intended to establish a lasting connection with the deceased. The horned beast of Bahia. Not only in the rainforests of Brazil are eerie creatures on the move, the Brazilian state of Bahia is apparently good for a shocking surprise too. With its beautiful coastal stretches, the region is a popular destination, particularly for American tourists. A 15-year-old girl took this incredible picture during a stroll through the mangrove forest near her holiday settlement. The creature visible in it looks like the devil incarnate, and the thing that seems to be disappearing into the swamp appears to be carrying a bundle that resembles a baby. This demonically looking humanoid became known as the Horned Beast of Brazil. So far, no one has been able to prove that the photo is real, but there is also no evidence that it isn't. Experts have tried to explain the image naturally by asserting that the creature in the picture is simply a very common oyster catcher in the area. The horns of the creature are supposed to be hair covered in mud, likely swept out of the face with equally dirty hands. The appearance of a lifeless child in the arms of the creature has been described as an optical illusion. In truth, it is said to be an artifact of oyster fishing.
Have you ever thought about the fact that archaeologists around the world are constantly working to decipher the past of human civilization? Scientists are looking for answers to questions about how earlier cultures lived, how humans gradually evolved, and what achievements they produced. In the process, amazing things and downright miracles keep turning up. High on a mountain in the Andes, researchers found an impossible city. Machu Picchu is located at an altitude of over 2,400 meters and had long been forgotten. The city itself is well above the tree line, but the dense jungle at lower elevations had perfectly shielded the area high up in the Andes for hundreds of years. When Professor Hiram Bingham of Yale University discovered the city in 1911, he was certainly the first white man and probably the first human to set foot on the steps of the City of the Gods in 400 years. The construction of this legendary city is attributed to the great Inca ruler Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, who ruled from 1438 to 1471. Very likely, the city above the clouds was not an ordinary settlement. Machu Picchu was much more likely a single magnificent royal estate reserved only for the ruler himself and the highest members of the nobility and priests. The Inca left few records, so we know very few facts about the true nature and purpose of the ancient city. Scientists would love to know how the Incas managed to build a magnificent city like this, at an altitude where many Westerners are already gasping for breath. All that remained for the researchers were investigations with the help of radiocarbon dating and excavations on site. Imagine how people before the 16th century, without electricity, carts, and tools, hauled stones to these high terraces. Only the best Inca builders were at work here, precisely constructing these magnificent stone structures. Machu Picchu was supposed to be cut off from the rest of the world and to relieve the inhabitants of the mundane. The Inca elite here wanted to be close to their gods. Today, it is not only the legacy of Inca culture that makes this city a legend. The second wonder of Machu Picchu is the way it was built. Without any mortar at all, the Incas built a city here directly on a seismically active mountain. Directly under the Earth's surface run fine fault lines, which are constantly shifting slightly due to movements of the area and the mountain. The Inca must have known about these movements because they did not use mortar and instead built with structures set tightly stone to stone. Even a slight earthquake would have made the mortar brittle. The stones, on the other hand, which were cut so perfectly that less than 0.02 centimeters of space remained between them, still form stable structures today that have easily survived several centuries and earthquakes in the region. The destruction of the god's dream. It is believed that the happiness of the rulers who resided here lasted less than a century. The inhabitants of Machu Picchu are believed to have lived in peace on the mountain for some 80+ years, until worrying news from lower Inca centers prompted them to abandon the mountain. A fatal mistake, as it would turn out. In 1532, Spanish conquistadors invaded Peru, and in their greedy search for gold, they destroyed large parts of the Inca Empire. The ancient Inca Empire had no weapons or military tactics to counter the Spanish forces. For centuries, no one had questioned the rule of these peoples. The few guards and soldiers were equipped with primitive weapons made of stone, wood, copper, and bronze. They had nothing to oppose the steel blades of the Spaniards and the armor. Probably the inhabitants of Machu Picchu fled out of fear. The city had hardly any defensive walls and offered no security. After the fall of the Inca Empire, many of the great cities were destroyed. The Spanish conquistadors knew no mercy, and many of the achievements built by the Incas lay in ruins. The Spaniards proceeded with all harshness, killing thousands of people, including numerous women, children, and they did not even stop at the rulers. Those who were not destroyed by the murderousness of the Spaniards died as a result of imported diseases such as influenza and measles. Only Machu Picchu was spared. Because of the altitude, no Spaniard ever set foot in the city. Presumably, the diseases would not have made it up the mountain either. So we are left with Machu Picchu as a unique documentation of the life of one of the most unusual peoples on this earth. Life in Machu Picchu. Isn't it fantastic that at least this city has been preserved and that today we can get a picture of the extraordinary life of these people? Imagine what life was once like here. Noble Inca nobles, some servants, farmers who provided food, and the priests shared together this city, which at that time was certainly one of the most magnificent and above all unusual in the world. Machu Picchu is still a wonder of the world and is mentioned in the same breath as the most magnificent buildings in the history of the world. The beautiful thing is that this city has been preserved almost unchanged. Although we do not have any records, experts in ancient cultures can almost perfectly trace the life in this city. The city was divided into two main areas: the urban upper city area, which housed palaces, temples, and residential quarters, and the lower city area, which was dedicated to the agricultural sector. The architecture of the entire city was perfectly adapted to the shape of the mountain. Architects of the 21st century can only marvel at the feats of which the Inca builders were capable. Over 200 buildings stood on the mountain, arranged in a perfectly parallel system of terraces. The terraces and levels of the city were connected by stone stairs cleverly carved into the mountain. Every street, every alley, and every house was accessible via such winding access routes without residents having to leave the protective ramparts of the upper city. In the eastern part were the living quarters of ordinary people, workers, servants, and lower officials, while in the west were the temples and stone structures for sacrificial rituals and ceremonies. The west housed the Torian, a massive tower that the ancient Incas used as an observatory to study the stars and the surrounding forest areas. Although only the elite were desired in this perfectly constructed city on the mountain, some 750 people inhabited it, including all the servants and workers. Reconstructions of everyday life show how the ruler, who was equated with a sun god, was admired and put on display all day long. The priesthood did everything to protect the ruler from harm and to satisfy the gods. While the upper city served the cult and the ruler worship, in the lower city, the best farmers of the culture worked to win these high potatoes and corn. Agriculture at 2,400 meters. Agriculture was practiced in Machu Picchu on hundreds of self-made terraces. Each terrace was artificially built along the side of the mountain and filled with fertile soil. These terraces are still an impressive feat of engineering today. They have a clever drainage system and were designed to protect the mountain itself from landslides and erosion. Given the steep slope of the terraces, both construction and irrigation have been a major challenge. During the rainy season, heavy amounts of water fall in this area of the Andes. Without the drainage systems, it would have simply washed away the terraces. But instead, the water ran skillfully and safely guided slowly through the fields and eventually down the mountain. Excavations showed that the Inca lived up here by far not only on potatoes and corn. Fruits were constantly brought up from lower elevations. Llamas and alpacas came from other parts of the Inca Empire. The relics of tombs and ceremonial sites indicated that these animals not only served as food and wool providers, but were also used for funeral rituals and other religious practices, sun cults and bloody rituals. Urban life in Machu Picchu may have functioned similarly to other parts of the Inca Empire, where there was no money and goods and services were exchanged. Taxes were paid by ordinary people in the form of labor obligations. In return, Inca rulers offered their subjects benefits such as rich access to food, land, and other goods. On certain occasions, there were great festivals where the rulers gathered their subjects for feasts and ceremonial events. The biggest events were worship and sacrificial ceremonies, which seem very bizarre to us today, and were almost always bloody, with people and animals killed in a brutal way. Machu Picchu was teeming with centuries-old monuments and temples. The Intihuatana stone was one of many ritual stones in the ancient Inca Empire and pointed directly at the sun on the winter solstice. The Inca believed that this stone had the power to hold the sun in place during the solstice, as it was almost directly over the stone and cast no shadow on any part. At certain times, sacrifices were made to the stone. In addition to material goods, the Inca had a penchant for blood sacrifices. Another structure that served the peculiar customs of this people was the Intimache, a special cave used in the celebration of the Royal Sun Festival. During this celebration, young men who had just reached adulthood were pierced in a ritual act and brought to the cave afterwards. There, their dead bodies or their souls were to watch the sunrise and pay homage with their sacrifice to the Inca's bizarre sun god. The cave was constructed so that light could enter only during the summer solstice in December and then fell on the sacrificed young men. A detailed study of the skeletal remains found in and around the city shows that most of the inhabitants of the city were immigrants from different parts of the continent. Presumably, people came to the city as laborers, slaves, or farmers. Even in the Inca Empire, Machu Picchu may have been a legend, and genetic differences show a motley population from all parts of the Inca Empire. Most of the human remains found here showed far fewer broken bones and arthritis than any other skeletons from the Inca Empire. Presumably, people at this altitude truly had a privileged life, and even the laborers and farmers performed lighter tasks than elsewhere in the empire. To this day, people are fascinated by this place, and every year more than 1 million people from all over the world come to see the former splendor of the Inca city. Click subscribe now for more exciting videos.